Welcome to I Heart Geek. And welcome to a spooky Halloween special.
Spooky, scary skeletons.
So I brought together our scariest people, I think, for this episode.
Wow.
Oh.
Scariest people?
Well, not really. Okay,
Somebody's going to be in trouble later.
I'm the scariest, and everybody else is just kind of splitting the difference. How's that?
Spooky and deranged?
There you go. That works. I'm Dub, and I'm here with Courtney. I'm here with Todd, and I'm here with Mr. Winchester. How y'all doing today? Y'all ready for Halloween? Got your candy and all that set up?
Oh yeah.
Well, I do notice in the backgrounds of everybody's picture, everybody has big libraries showing, and once again, I am shown with all the books I've read. Damn it!
Is that directions?
I'm a book nerd, so
well,
That's
you're
the
a
Star
writer.
Registry.
So
yeah, I'm a writer.
So today we are going to discuss scary novels and graphic novels and our favorites of those and what makes them good and what makes them not so good sometimes. So, but we're going to get into some fun stuff today. So let me ask this question, since this is coming out. This is technically our Halloween episode, so this will be out like 4 days before Halloween. What do you like to give out for Halloween candy? 1, and 2, what is your favorite Halloween candy? Let's start with Todd on this one.
We give out chocolate. I always liked getting chocolate when I was a kid. I hated getting like loose candy corn and packaged up homemade cookies and so yeah, we try to give as much chocolate as possible. When I was a kid, the Abba Zaba.
You have any teeth left after that?
Sure.
Mr. Winchester, what about you, bud?
We like to make popcorn and form them into little balls and dye them different colors. No, I'm just kidding. I still have a house. Whatever we just get from Costco, the large variety bags. The
50-gallon bag of trash stuff? Yes.
I think we tend to do the some of the sour stuff and now and later stuff like that, basically so it sits inside the pantry and I do not attack it.
Smart move.
Stuff I would not normally eat.
So Miss Courtney, what about you? And I know you're not candy-rific anymore, but
no, I don't eat candy
because you're smart.
But that basically translates to, listeners, is any leftover candy that I'm going to have is going to go to Dub. For him to eat, him and his kids. Or TC can have it too. I'm kind of like a cross between Winchester and TC. I get the big bag of it because there's a lot of kids in my neighborhood. But it also usually tends to be chocolate, like those variety bags of like Snickers and Twix and stuff like that. And one rule, listeners, if you are a kid and you're going to trick or treat, if you come to Miss Geeky Page's house and you are over the age of 13, I don't care. As long as you're a costume and as long as you say trick or treat, I will hand you a handful of candy. I'm not one of those people that discriminate. But yeah, I am. When I was
teenagers need their munchies, after all.
As far as I'm concerned, if a teenager comes to my door on Halloween and says trick or treat, you can have some candy.
Hell yeah.
I'm not one of those stickler ones. When I did eat candy, I used to love Snickers. That was my thing. But nice. I don't eat candy.
I hear they
anymore,
really satisfy.
They do.
I love
except for the tiny little ones.
I love me some peanut butter cups. Those are just bomb dizzle.
Reese's, yeah.
You know what irritates the crap out of me? Just while we're on the subject, is kids.
Pretty much everything.
Kids that come to your house and either they just hold out the bag, they don't say trick or treat, and they don't say thank you. I'm like, where are your parents, you little ungrateful butt?
I just need you to say trick or treat. Like, I don't even care about the thank you. You got to say trick or treat. I will give you a fistful of candy if you do. Like, I will
when they just
reach
hold out
in
the
and
bag,
hand you.
Like, I mean, that's one thing, but come on.
That's why those little popcorn balls that eventually turn into cement come in handy for the ungrateful children who walk away and don't say
Give
anything.
them the good and plenty.
I kind of learned a morality lesson a few years ago. A small group of kids came up to my door and I opened the door with the bowl in my hand, and not one of them had a costume on. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird. I said, guys, where's your costumes this year? And the little girl in front says, Mommy couldn't afford one for us.
Oh,
Yeah. And I was like, well, you know what? That's okay, because you're still out here knocking on doors and saying trick or treat.
Yep.
Here you go. And I just dumped the whole damn bowl in her the four of them's bags.
Yep.
And I learned not to ask that dang question no more.
Yep. I had a bunch of teenagers come to my door one year, and they just looked like they were in their street clothes, and they said trick or treat, but I'm like, what were your costumes? And they pulled up. Well, no, they pulled up a mask. Like, one pulled a mask down that was on his head. Another pulled up like a gator and goes, "We're from the Purge." I'm like, okay, here you go.
Yeah. I'll give you a C+. Here's your candy.
You said trick or treat, and you gave me an excuse for your street clothes.
Here's your candy corn.
You didn't kill me. Thank you.
Right, have some candy.
Okay, so let's get back to the subject at hand. First question I'm going to ask, and because you guys are pretty avid readers, so this is why I'm going to ask you guys this. When you hear the statement, and this is the common statement, the book was better or scarier than the movie, what in particular is it that makes it better usually? Let's start with Todd on this one, because it looks like he's got something that's going to burn through his skull.
Well, who barked?
Not Chaplin.
Okay, anyway, it's quite easy why the book is almost always better, if not always better. In the book, you're allowed to tiptoe through the characters' thoughts and motivations. The movies have a hard time conveying that, just because the thought process can be so complex and deep. So that it's an informational process for me, why I enjoy books more than movies. Also, there's not a time limit on a book.
That's good.
I can put the bookmark in and go to the bathroom.
What about you, Mr. Winchester?
So books can, pretty much what like Todd was saying, books can give you a lot more information too. The books can go longer. You know, you can have a 600-page book that they can cut down into like a 2.5-hour movie. So they're leaving out a lot of stuff, so they can go real descriptive in the book as to what's going on with whatever the story and plot line is. I also believe that you can get lost in your own imagination while you're reading it. In the example of one of the books that I chose for the top 5, you sit there and you start to read it, and then you go, well, how are they going to do that? And, it never really transfers over. Sometimes it doesn't. It's a really good thing, but, you can live inside your imagination when you're reading the book, and they can go all over the place. Plus, you get at least, more than half the names wrong when you say them in your head and then you hear them out loud. So, at least in my case.
True.
But books can take you away to that little imagination land, and I think that, and especially with like scary books, can really mess with you.
Very good. Courtney?
Pretty much what both the guys said. I mean, you have 90 minutes on average for a movie, which translates to 90 pages of a screenplay, because the rule is like 1 page per minute. But you could have like a 600-page book or a 1,000-page book that, and the other thing is
1,800-page book.
Yeah. And I mean, like, depending on the author too, the descriptions of where people are or what's happening are always a lot richer and fuller than what you get. Even with the advent of the great special effects and the great CG that we have now, you still have that problem. And then the other thing that occurs is lots of times when a book translates to a film, whether it be a scary book or just a book in general, lots of times it's not the full story.
Yeah.
And or the story shifts. Like one of the books that's on my list, with the exception of the characters' names, the movie doesn't have anything to do with.
Oh, that's on a couple people's list.
Really, what happens in the story? I mean, there's like some, but I mean, like there's this whole, and I love the movie version. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, the book, it's like they're 2 different animals. This one just happens to be named after this one. So I mean, that's the other problem you run across Y'all are
Good
laughing
point.
because you know exactly which one I'm talking about on my list.
Yep.
Now, my issue with reading scary novels is honestly, I give me a fantasy book, give me any other kind of book, and I'm just like in that world and I'm immersed in it. I do a horror book, it doesn't scare me, and it just really, I don't know if it's just my own self-defense mechanisms because I'm kind of a wuss and don't really like horror movies.
You're
and all
not
that,
really a horror dude.
I get scared, but it doesn't. The books don't affect me, and it's really weird. When all the other genres, it just I'm in it, but the I don't feel that emotion, and I wish I could feel that emotion that everybody feels when they read these horror books.
You know what, Dub? I have a feeling that mostly what it's doing is piquing your intellect, and your mind is struggling to logic your way out of it, and you're thinking so hard you're kind of missing the ice pick in the back.
Good word on that. Okay, that's fair.
That
Okay,
makes sense.
so today we will be discussing novels, graphic novels, poetry, anything of that type within the horror genre. Now, I split some of these up because I want to discuss these real quick. I'm going to ask everybody what their thoughts are on horror, good and bad, and these are the subjects we're going to hit. We're going to hit classical, graphic and comics, like superstars, like the Stephen King and modern and independent books. So let's discuss first the good and the bad of the classical horror stuff. This goes from everything from Dracula to Frankenstein, Edgar Allan Poe. What makes this so? And this stuff I get into, but more as a story than a horror. But I love the classical monsters and all that. What is it that makes them so good? Let's start with Courtney on this one, or bad.
Well, in terms of things like Frankenstein and Dracula and Edgar Allan Poe, and Nathaniel Hawthorne, who wrote The House of Seven Gables and The Scarlet Letter, but that's not really horror.
That could be scary.
It could be.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah, but I
based
think
The Handmaid's Tale on this.
no, The Handmaid's Tale is based on The Handmaid's Tale.
That's a joke.
Yeah, but it's another one that doesn't. The dots don't connect. I love you, but it doesn't.
This is why we're friends. Okay.
Right. But I think we talked about this when we talked about horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
People like to be scared. We like to be scared. That's like why our obsession with serial killers and true crime and all that stuff has lasted as long as it has. And the books like Dracula and House of Seven Gables, and it's all gothic horror too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very atmospheric, and they draw you in, and you can kind of get immersed into this mist covered Hound of the Baskervilles kind of world. And that I think people like that. We like to be on the edge of our seats. We like to be looking over our shoulder in case somebody comes up. We like goosebumps on our arms. That's why horror films and horror books and horror haunts and all this kind of stuff has never gone out of style.
Yeah.
We just like to be scared. And the thing is with Frankenstein specifically, it's really considered the very first horror novel ever written.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
And so,
by a woman.
Also by a woman. So, that's got that cool distinction. Up until that point, stuff didn't really, their literature really wasn't like that. So, it changed the literary scene as well as just they're well written. That's the other thing is they're well written. And that's why they've stood the test of time, because Poe's a genius. Stoker's a genius. Mary Shelley's a genius. And
and a little bit mad.
well, they all were kind of a little goofy.
You got to have a little madness in the head for that stuff.
Yeah, but all three of those examples were also highly educated people.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Poe, you just add heroin.
Yep.
Yeah, and Mary Shelley, you add what is presumably bipolar or schizophrenia.
Oh yeah. A little bit of craziness there.
I think we forgot to mention Gaston Leroux, who wrote The Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, yeah.
Makes me wonder what that guy was smoking.
It was a lot of the
Drugs.
asbestos from the
Lots of drugs.
Yeah, there you go.
Asbestos.
What about you, Winchester?
So, as far as like the classic novels and everything like that, I mean, you got to go back to when they were all written. I believe Mary Shelley was mid 1800s when Frankenstein, and obviously Bram Stoker was right before 1900 with Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
What else was there during that day and age? You know, they come up with this fantastical idea of, you know, these monsters or something that is loosely based upon something that happened, because I believe Bram Stoker said it was based off of Vlad the Impaler or something along those lines. It blows up into a phenomenon because a lot of people, you know, read it, they can't believe what they just read. They, you know, word of mouth. Back then, 1800s taught what, there was like 100,000 people in the U.S. maybe, but sorry, old joke.
That took me a minute too.
Yeah, it did. Got no laughter.
That landed like a belly flop. You know, it's great.
So it did. But you know, nobody knew it because everything was so wholesome at that time. You know, there wasn't a lot of things everybody knew about, like the witch trials from the 1500s. You know, was like one of the scariest things around. And then it was just all about plagues. But you come up with a monster, something like that, you know, it gets everybody's interest. It gets everybody to, you know, go into a new thought realm. And, you know, obviously it is a huge phenomenon since Dracula and Frankenstein are still around today and, you know, done over 100,000 times.
Yeah.
You know, different iterations of it. So it's just hitting it at the right time, I believe, is probably the way I'm trying to say it.
Very good. What about you, Todd?
I like that striking while the iron's hot aspect of it there, Winchester. Good call on that. You know, Frankenstein and Dracula, specifically those stories, both of them had a lot to do with the Industrial Revolution that was really cranking hard right then. The story of Dracula, there have been stories of vampires since like Egypt. That's not an unusual story to hear, no matter where you go in the globe. Same thing with werewolves, a very popular thing that it makes people wonder if there's actually some truth-ish to it. Frankenstein, that was something utterly new. Bringing somebody back to life hadn't been done in a literary sense since the Bible. But the Bible
treading lightly.
Yes,
Yeah,
the Bible did it a little cleaner. But yeah, the book Frankenstein is nothing like the movie Frankenstein. The movie Frankenstein made him out to be this shambling, evil Hulk. The book was actually very erudite, very well spoken, very deep character, deep emotions. Who was terribly wronged by his maker. That's what made that terrifying, is because the lengths that he went to straighten that out. But the fact of the matter is, I think Chris hit it right on the head with this, that they were just at the right place at the right time, had the right psychosis, was able to put it down on paper, and shazam, instant classics.
They were lurid. You know, they were very lurid for the time. And
so explicit, yes.
Yeah, and so people were like, oh my. You know, ladies are clutching their pearls and reaching for the smelling salts as they turn the pages. So.
Half of the guys were too.
They came up with fainting couches.
Do we consider the Brothers Grimm as part of this, or is there their own thing? Because they're those early fairy tales. Oh, that was scary. That was terrifying. And yes, over the years we've cleaned it, but there is some terrifying stuff. And I don't know if that's kind of the Doctor Who type factor, where you start them out young with the horror stuff, and then they grow up with it. I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not.
I don't know. I mean, some of them are pretty dark. I mean, like in the original Cinderella,
they're all dark.
Stepsister. Yeah, I mean, the stepsisters cut off their feet and try to fit in the shoe. And the only reason the prince realizes it's not the woman he loves is because he sees blood oozing out. And I mean, then they get their eyes pecked out by
that's
birds.
scarier to me than anything that we talked about earlier.
Hansel and Gretel, like there's a witch that's eating children.
They did not beat her at the end of it in the original.
No, she literally shoves them in there and eats them. So I mean, yeah, maybe we could consider it. But again, those are like what Todd said with Dracula, or I think maybe Chris said it. Those are based on actual myths that were running around at the time. So I mean, for everything that's scary that we're going to talk about, there's usually, if you go back through history, there's something that informed it. I mean, maybe not the Phantom, but because the Phantom, he wrote the Phantom because he was touring the opera house and he found
freaked out.
They took him down to the catacombs, and there were bones down in the catacombs underneath. And there were people that were held there during the French Revolution. They were hiding during the French Revolution. The aristocrats. And then he got the idea of, let's create a murdering skull guy who, is a bit of a pedophile. So I love the Phantom, Dub, sorry, but it's true.
Dub, just so you're aware, since you brought up Grimm's fairy tales, there are those who believe quite strongly in the theory that the Grimm brothers wrote those fairy tales as a payment to the fairy court in order to keep the fairy court in the minds of humans.
The Unsteely court?
Yes.
Cool. I didn't know that.
That goes with like American Gods. That's the same kind of thought behind it.
Courtney,
I think that's really interesting. I've never heard that before.
Courtney, read the Dresden Files. You'll enjoy the hell out of it.
I haven't started them. They're on my to be read list.
Shall I send them to you on electronic version? You can just pop them in the pad.
Yes.
Okay, now
sorry, listeners. Bye. We went on a tangent.
We did not talk about pirating right there, really.
No.
Let's move on to what my favorite of the genre is: the graphic novels, comics. Now, this to me is, I'll say what I like on it, then I'll go with you guys. I think that there's something that's so much more fun with the horror stuff with the graphic novels. You can get so much more gory than you can get in a movie, and it's you're still in that comic book world, so it's not like scary, quote unquote.
They're just so graphic.
But these I really do enjoy reading. Zenscope puts out some really good ones that are like a mix of a bunch of old horror stories, and it's a lot. It's like all the campfire horror stories we used to tell each other, but those to me are fun. Now, the problem with the graphic novels, the bad part about it is there always is a page limit. So you can't really get into the story as much as I know you can in like the graphic novels themselves. Let's start with Winchester on this. I don't know how schooled you are in the graphic novels with horror.
I'm glad you came to me on that one, so I will defer back to someone else because, graphic novel. I mean, other than I do own and have started reading I think it's The Stand that they did. They did some graphic novels for. Actually, yeah.
Or no, Dark Tower. They did a bunch.
Dark
of stuff
Tower.
On this. Yeah.
So I've got some of those that I've gone through, but other than that, I really don't have or any knowledge of the graphic novel side.
Okay, let's defer over to Todd because I know I've loaned you a few of these.
Oh yes,
yes. So what makes these work or not work?
A lot of it, I mean, is quite frankly the artwork. The stories by Neil Gaiman, for example. Gee, many crickets, man! You're pushing your intellect to quite a few of its limits, trying to comprehend the thought process that they're putting in, and then you have these unbelievable, fantastic illustrations that just push it right over the line and really makes your mind go in places that you didn't expect it to. It helps to have the visuals. I know men are much more visually acute or activated than women. Women tend to be a little bit more tactile. Am I correct, Courtney?
We tend to be more emotional.
You don't know me. You don't know me.
I always knew you were a girl, but
but I'm not sure
A little.
if the story of Dream is
horror.
in
I was
the
debating
horror
on it if
genre.
it was, but there's scary parts of it.
It certainly could be, because after all, he interacts with death herself.
Mhm.
But there's a lot out there. Some of the Stephen King stuff, Winchester, the early gunslinger stuff, the pre-gunslinger stories, unbelievably fantastic.
That artwork is second to none.
It's out of this world. It makes you wonder if they used a computer for it.
A little bit.
It's that good. So yeah, it's just the visual aspect of it, especially if it's done correctly, can really bring the story out for the reader.
Very good. Courtney?
So I've actually never read any.
You are
graphic
about
novels.
to be inundated with some.
I've read a couple of. Full disclosure, Dub has gotten me into graphic novels since I've started working on the podcast with you guys. It was never really something that I read before. So my horror graphic novel education is severely lacking. So I have to defer to you guys because I don't know.
Well, I do want you to think about this one. Wonder Woman, when everything got reintroduced, I believe after Flashpoint with the New 52.
Yeah.
I would say, especially that first 2 or 3 arcs were definitely in the horror realm. I mean, they're killing babies. They're doing it's very Vertigo stuff.
I don't know if I would deem those horror though, but I mean, they are pretty graphic. I mean, because I mean, Ares was laying waste to everyone in that first bit of it. And so was Wonder Woman. So.
And some of the history of the Amazonians are like, ooh, they're not heroes. They're pretty bad people on some stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know.
But,
I mean, Bloodlines, I guess, and Gods and Monsters.
Yeah. I put it in the same horror category as I'd put like Preacher, which on the basis of Preacher is definitely horror. But it's just how deep it is. That's why I always feel comfortable with these, because yes, on the top layer it's definitely horror, but you dig deeper and it is deep and it is intelligent, and it's always a fantastical world underneath it all, which as not being a horror guy makes it a lot more palatable to me.
When your best friend's a vampire, you're pretty much in the horror genre.
Yeah, something like that. Okay, now let's move on to, I'm going to put these last two together. The modern era and the independents and the superstars, Stephen King, Dean Koontz type.
And Rice.
Yeah, what works right now? Is Anne Rice still relevant? I love the vampires.
Yes.
Stuff. Okay.
She has made a mummy book, a werewolf book,
she went on the Catholicism thing for a while, and I was like, oh,
she lost her husband.
Yeah.
The Beauty.
She lost her husband.
Series was a little much.
There's a new TV show that's coming that is the Interview with the Vampire series. So yeah, she's
can't
still
be worse
relevant.
than the movies.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Interview is good. Queen of the Dam.
I just didn't like Tom Cruise.
There was good aspects in Queen of the Damned, but
I enjoyed the soundtrack. I still have it.
There was one good aspect, and she was beautiful.
But she was a terrible actor.
So
she was
a great actress. I said she was beautiful.
Right, she was beautiful. And yeah, I will agree I will agree that the soundtrack is pretty amazing. I do wish they could have gotten, forgive me for not knowing his name, but if they could have gotten the lead singer of Korn to actually be able to be
Jonathan Davis.
Yeah, be on the soundtrack. He's in the movie. He's the voice of Lestat, singing voice of Lestat in the film, but contract issues between the labels wouldn't allow him to be on the record.
Yeah.
So let's hit.
Sorry.
That's okay. Let's hit this for a minute. What makes the modern era good, and what makes it bad? Let's start with Courtney this time.
There's a lot of bad.
There's too much.
There's a lot of bad,
especially the independent stuff.
But I mean, it's like, when you still think of the superstars, I mean, Stephen King is still out there writing stuff.
Still.
Yeah, I mean, Anne Rice is still out there. Her son, Christopher, who's a hoot, by the way, he writes he writes romantic horror, which is really
most romance
quite good
is a horror
too. Right. I mean, that's most horror is romance. There's always a love story in there somewhere.
Also, Stephen King's son Joe Hill is in the horror genre as well.
He does it too. So I mean, there's those, and then she's on a couple of her books are on my list. Her name is Heather Graham. She writes a bunch of that stuff that she's extremely popular too. But I mean, on the other hand of that, there's a lot of stuff that's not good. But I mean, I think it still goes back to what we talked about before is people like to be scared.
Yeah.
We like to turn the lights off and read in the dark and have the bejesus scared out of us about, even though we know there's no such thing as vampires and werewolves, but we know there's serial killers and sick people. So we read about serial killers and sick people, and we like to be scared. It's that adrenaline rush that, just gets people going. And I think that's why horror is still such a huge part of literature.
Mm-hmm. Todd, what about you? Modern era. What's good? What's bad?
Well, the good part, of course, is that there are so many different aspects of the horror genre. With the modernization of humanity, the idea process has expanded. So there's different ways of scaring people now. It doesn't have to just be fangs or claws. It can be microbes. It can be the loss of time. This is a very prevalent concept with a lot of people, how little time we have. Okay, how about I took away 3 years of your life in the future. Well, that would scare the hell out of me personally.
Yeah.
Anyways, Courtney made a great point that we like to be scared. But I think the reason we like to be scared is because after we put the book down, you put the bookmark in, put the book down, take a deep breath, and you feel so much better because you're not actually living in that terror situation. Yeah. It's like, oh, thank God, I have to take the trash out instead of being disemboweled. Whew.
As long as the bad guy's not waiting at the garbage can, I'm just saying.
That just created a whole new horror book right there. Somebody get on that.
You fall from one horror book into the next book. Yay. But that's the whole aspect is, first and foremost, when you put the book down, big deep breath. Oh, thank God. Yes, my heart's racing, but there isn't a guy with a knife behind me. And the second aspect, or I guess the first one, what I started with, was there's just so many different kinds of fear now.
Very good. Winchester.
Yeah, I'll right off the bat agree with that. There are a lot of different fears now. As far as the bad these days goes, is it's back to that rehashing, what's already been done, and everybody trying a little piece of that. Which is what happens throughout history anyways, right? Everybody gets inspiration from somewhere, but a lot of people try to rehash stuff. But it's when you can kind of take that idea and then elevate it, or put a new spin on it, is when something good can come out of it. I mean, Stephen King has been on everybody's radar since the late 60s, early 70s.
70s.
Yeah.
And
mid-70s.
It's done almost everything, when it comes to a book. And then now his kids are writing, and Joe Hill, who's still one of my favorites right now with just his novels, not just the lock and key stuff, but it spawns new people, I guess, is another way that you can do that. They can take something that Stephen King has written previously and said, I had an idea kind of like that.
Yeah.
And turn it into there. Obviously we went through little phases. You have all the different ones with zombies. Zombies is always going to be a big thing, and a lot of people
Vampires
doing it.
Were big for a while. It's been cycles. Yeah.
So everything going in cycles. But I mean, there's some really good stuff out there for you. Just got to kind of seek it out, and then it's all about the world building, right?
Yeah.
They bring you into the world and they keep you going and turning that page, or picking up that next book. There's there's a guy that my brother turned me on to named Brian Lumley, who writes these books called Necroscope. And he's got, I forget how many are in there, but there's quite a bit. But I mean, that's another one. You start reading it and then you want to get to that next one. It's an entire world building thing.
Yeah.
So it's tough out there because it's oversaturated, I believe. And it has been done before. But when somebody does pick up something and start something, then it's always something special.
Speaking of which, Dean Koontz, check out the Frankenstein series. Trust me on this one.
Really?
Yes. Really, really.
I can agree with everything y'all are saying, but you also, my biggest issue with the modern stuff is you have to read, and this is for every genre because it is so saturated. You got to read 3 books before you find the one that's good. And it's just, there's a lot. I feel like there's more bad than good. And that sucks because I think that takes a lot of people away from reading. Because we've become a lazy society. We don't read as much. And if something doesn't catch you, a lot of people give up stuff.
I think Courtney and I will agree that
we don't read as much.
You got to read a lot of Toads before you kiss that prince.
Exactly.
I'm saying,
exactly.
No, and I'm not saying everybody, but that is a in general thing. That's our society. It's become that way. And it's a bummer because we don't have the patience we used to have. But they didn't put out. I mean, there was so many gatekeepers before, and yeah, I mean we can argue back and forth on that, but I don't really want to. That it might be a good thing that there were all these gatekeepers because you only got the best of the best before that.
I don't know if it was gatekeepers, or if you could look at it as just the very nature of publishing has changed. Especially with the invention of ebooks.
Yeah.
Because, I mean...
lower investment.
The dissemination is a lot easier.
And now a lot...
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, now a lot of people go... in the publishing world, people tend to call it indie publishing, which is just a nicer way of saying self-publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Because self-publishing...
Or small house publishing.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm published by small houses. But it's not self-publishing. It's actually traditional publishing, but it's a small house. But people can self-publish so much easier than they used to be able to with the
which
invention.
Is good and bad.
Exactly, which goes both ways. So, I mean, I think that's why it's so saturated. So I don't know if it's gatekeeping or if it's just there's more opportunities because of how publishing works now. One thing I'd like to mention back up on Chris's point where he said you have these modern writers who are taking old themes and changing them and making them great. He's got a great point because I mean, look at Anne Rice. Up until that point, we had vampires who were just blood-sucking monsters. She made her blood-sucking monsters elegant. Which up until that point, but they were still blood-sucking monsters, and they killed people and they ate people all the time. And I mean, not like the Twilight crap.
She gave them
the
an
Twilight
emotional
crap we
depth.
have.
The glow in the dark vampires.
More the lost.
Yeah, and I mean, Dracula was elegant to a certain extent. But she kind of like elevated that concept. So she changed how we looked at vampires. Mm. It's the same thing with Stephen King. He took the fear of clowns that people have and he turned it into Pennywise.
Yeah.
This terrifying creature that will eat children to stay alive.
Played by Tim Curry.
Right. And so I think that's what a lot of the modern people are doing. I'll say the modern giants in the horror genre, because some of the new people try to do it and it's like, this was better in your head. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add to that.
So Dub, if I may swap a word for you, I'm not sure if I would have used gatekeeper. I might have used pathfinders.
There you go.
That works.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Okay. With that being said, because we're running out of time, we're going to an ultra abbreviated listener feedback.
And now, let's see what all of our geek rock stars have to say.
Okay, so for this listener feedback, we had a couple things on some of our things. Christine has a really good one up on Facebook if you want to check that one out about Dean Koontz. We're just running short on time. So, and this one you can't read anywhere else. So, Mr. Winchester, as a pleasure to everybody, instead of Courtney reading it, would you like to read this very special listener feedback from Satomi?
Yeah. So Satomi writes, Shockheaded Peter by Heinrich Hoffmann. It's a collection of 6 German cautionary tales and probably the most horrifying children's book ever printed. Specifically, the story of Little Suck-a-Thumb, a tale in which a boy named Conrad is warned not to suck his thumbs or the scissor man will come out and cut them off. Ignoring the warning, he, of course, puts his thumb in his mouth, and at which point the scissor man appears and snips off old poor Conrad's thumbs with gigantic scissors, leaving Conrad actively bleeding to death in the illustrations. She says, "Oh yes, the House of Horrors is illustrated, and as a child, she got this book as a gift from her father, and that explains a lot," she says.
What is wrong with people?
A lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, this is a poem passage from 1860 something, I believe it was, and it was a way to scare the kids from doing something normal that kids do, which is suck your thumb. So
and on a scale of 1 to 10, we give it an 8.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Very good. Very good. But yeah, 1845 is when this came out. This actual poem, and I recommend look it up and read it. It's a very quick read, but it's again, it kind of goes into what people hey, I want you to stop sucking your thumb. It's don't make sure you don't look under the bed for the boogeyman type thing. It's just cautioning you against something that's like everyday life. So, and
it's fairly
to do it to the kid. Yeah, towards the kids for sure. But yeah, it's a little bit more than kids need to hear. Yeah. Well, nowadays, yeah for sure, because
it's like stop sucking your binky or I'll cut your head off.
Yeah,
that works.
That's a little extreme.
Okay, so we appreciate the listener feedback, and we are going to jump over to our main event.
Now it's time for the main event.
Okay, so for today's version of the main event, I asked, what is your top 5 favorite horror or scary novels or graphic novels or whatever it is that we're talking about today? So let's get this started. And this one goes out to you, Courtney. My number 5 is just about every story I've found in the last 15 years for Vampirella. I don't care. It's my favorite vampire, and it's just such a great world, and there's such horrible moments that happen that just stick with you. And that to me says a lot about a graphic novel in general. But Vampirella, and because Courtney loves the suit more than anything.
I hate her costume.
Yeah, but great
the listeners
character.
know that, though.
Yes, we all know this. We've been fighting about this literally for 3 years.
Right.
This could have nothing to do with the visual representation of her that they give.
I just hate the costume. It's like, I don't see how you can fight crime and evil
in a corset.
She's not even wearing a corset. Like she's wearing some ribbon.
It's like, I'm sorry if she was
onesie. I'm sorry if she's
the
that
Borat.
Well endowed as her graphic is. Stuff will pop out when she tries to kick people. I'm just saying.
Well, let's be honest. When they were originally drawing her, that's all it really was. Stuff popping out.
I just don't know how she keeps it on without double-sided tape. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough. So, number 5.
Elmer's.
Ow. Duct tape.
It hurts, by the way.
Number 5 for Todd.
Easy. The Exorcist. If you guys thought the movie was scary,
oh my god, the only horror movie that has ever scared the hell out of me, and literally,
the book will make you stop peeing. It's so scary.
Wow,
I can't read the book.
that's
the
graphic.
movie scared me so bad. I don't even want to read the book. That's how it is.
Okay,
the
Well,
book's
and,
at least twice as scary.
oh yeah, for sure. Then that's my number one. So to give up the thing, but yeah, it's
Sorry to bust your balloon, bro.
oh no. You can never talk about it enough.
Yeah.
So
okay, we'll reach this one again when we get to Winchester's number one. We'll finish the discussion on that. Okay, so Mr. Winchester, what is your number 5, sir?
So because I like Carrot Top like props, this little book right here. So it's called The Secret Life of Laszlo, Count Dracula. This book was written in '94 by a psychiatrist in his debut. And it's about Dracula himself kind of finding himself as he is in the city doing research for stuff. There's no other vampires in it or anything like that. It's just a daily kind of diary thing on how his desires manifest, how he begins to go on the hunt, what he's done for the hunt and everything. And it's, like I said, it's done pretty much all as like a diary of this Laszlo Count Dracula.
It's a character study.
Yeah, it was
cool.
such an amazing read, and I just happened to walk past it, and it being a hardcover, because as Courtney would know, sitting on the shelf, hardcovers just look so much more beautiful.
They look
And
cool.
I and I picked it up, and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool, and I read it like 2-day read because it just trapped me in it. So another one of those, take the old thing and then elevate it, and he did just that. So
it looks like it has the picture of Robert Patterson on the front of it.
Robert Pattinson could never.
The sparkly vampire?
No, he's not glowing.
Oh, thank God.
Vampires shouldn't glow.
Yeah.
I feel strongly about it.
Oh, Lord.
So what is your number 5, Miss Courtney?
I got your back.
I will just briefly, because I think it's on Winchester's list, so I'm going to say Frankenstein. The original hardcore Mary Shelley Frankenstein. Oh, did you take it off?
Not, so
okay.
no,
was it on your side?
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. So we can talk
never
about
mind,
it.
Then I'll talk about it.
The first zombie novel, to be honest.
To a certain extent, yeah. I mean, it is considered the very first. Yeah, I wouldn't call him a zombie, but it's okay. It's considered the very first true horror novel ever written.
Kickstarted the genre.
Yeah, and like she pretty much. So I mean, you could say that Frankenstein was the very first classic monster that ever happened. Mm-hmm. And I will be full disclosure. Even the giant book nerd that I am, I actually just read it for the first time 2 years ago.
Oh my God.
I read it in one night.
I was gonna say you ate it like a cheese sandwich.
I did. I ate it like ice cream because I picked it up. I'm like, I should probably read this because I have a degree in English and I'm like pretentious. And so I said, I'll just read it. Right. Knowing you're a pretentious English dork, you might as well do it. So I sat down and I'm like, all right, I'll just read this thing. And from the first page, couldn't put it down. Could not
utterly
put it
engrossed,
down.
Huh?
Yeah, it was so good. I read it the whole night. I think I stayed up. It was one of those, like, I was some teenager reading something I shouldn't in the middle of the night. Like, and I go to put it down and going, no, I got to finish
just
this.
a couple more pages.
Okay. Oh my God. It's 1:00. I should go to bed. I'm old. No, I got to finish it. So yeah. If you've never read it, guys, read it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And Dub, in answer to your the first zombie story statement, the secondary title to the book lays that to waste. Mm-hmm. It's Frankenstein or The Modern Prometheus.
Prometheus, yeah. And just a side note for anybody, like Todd said, in the movies, he tends to be the monster himself tends to be kind of like this bumbling kind of creature. If you can,
not in the book.
Yeah, if you can find it, there's a brilliant stage adaptation starring Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller, and they actually switch off the roles. One time in one version, Benedict plays the monster, and Johnny Lee Miller, who I don't know if everybody knows, he played Sherlock Holmes in the Elementary TV show. He plays Frankenstein. And then in another version, they switch.
Yeah.
And I've seen both versions. They're both brilliant. And that gives you a truer version of what the monster looks like in the book. So if you can find it, check it out. It's really good.
I thought the De Niro version was incredible.
Thank you.
That's really good too.
The best representation of the story I've ever seen on film.
Yeah, that's a really good version too.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't, give extra credit for the Gene Wilder version. Okay, so let's go to
you know what though? To be honest though, while it's a parody and a comedy, they make the monster a thinking, feeling creature in that
Peter
as
Boyle.
well, even though it's a comedy.
It's Raymond's dad.
Yeah, so that's actually a pretty close representation of what the monster becomes in the book too. So anyways, sorry.
Okay.
Random tangent.
So let's go to number 4. This is the comic book that changed the entire landscape of TV, and that's The Walking Dead. Every story arc, it's all graphic and horrible, and the things they put in that comic that they could never put on TV were amazing.
Horrid. Yeah.
Horrific. And because it's not necessarily the zombies that are the bad guys. They're not the monster. The monster are the people, and it's just tribalism at its worst.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, what is your number 4? Who do we start with? Todd.
Michael Crichton's The Andromeda Strain. Kind of has a lot of relevance in nowadays because it's a story about basically a government section that is farting around with genes and viruses, and it gets out, and it pretty much wipes out 96% of human life. Oops. Yeah.
Whoopsie.
Like I said, modern days, there's a lot of different facets of terror you can pursue. This one hit me pretty strong, and I read it 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And now we're living it.
And let's move off to that before they give us one of those warnings. Mr. Winchester, number 4.
I didn't say the V word.
Yeah. Michael Crichton, so amazing. Mine staying in pretty much the same deal would be World War Z, which is written by the son of Mel Brooks, Max Brooks. This book really, for me, this is where you're able to visualize everything. Because especially the Battle of Yonkers was one of the more, like you can start to picture it, and you can start to, see how everybody was going to be doomed from that point on, because these were fast-running zombies, and
they had no concept of what the humans had no concept of the level of violence coming.
Yeah, and the movie unfortunately fell short, which is too bad.
Not even a little bit.
I do. There were some good parts. I mean, the way they depicted the zombies, and especially with being overrun, I mean that really kind of put a staple on it. But just the way that they did this book with all the different, the guy going around getting everybody's stories from when it actually happened. It was all after the fact. Well, tell me about this, and he's able to just take you into these stories. And the Yonkers one, the guys that were up in space, was terrifying. Even though they were just up there looking down. And it's
the Jewish settlement really freaked me out.
Yeah, that one was really good too. So I recommend reading the book. It's such an amazing read. And
nice.
Unfortunately fell short on the movies. I heard there was another one in the works, but who knows?
Let's hope not.
Miss Courtney, what is your number 4?
The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Oh,
Ichabod Crane.
Ichabod Crane and Brum Bones and Katrina Van Tassel and the good old Headless Horseman himself.
And the Disney version took so much of the terror away from it.
The cartoon? Yeah,
yes.
I mean, the cartoon was great when you were kids. The Tim Burton movie is literally just Sleepy Hollow in the name alone.
Mm-hmm.
But I love it. But the reason I love this one so much is my dad actually used to read this to my brother and I when we were kids on Halloween. Like
Oh,
he
cool.
would read it to us before Halloween or like on Halloween. And so it has that great sentimental, and I mean it's actually like, I don't know if it'd be considered a book because it's not super long.
No,
it's probably more of like a novella or a short story. Yeah.
It's a morality tale. Come on.
Yeah, if you haven't read it, you really should, because it is very good. And like I said, my dad used to read it to my brother and I around Halloween every year when we were kids.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
we all knew about Ichabod and his fight with the headless horseman.
And on a side note, the first 2 seasons of that show were fantastic. So just stop watching it the end of season.
Yeah,
Agreed.
the TV show.
I don't watch much television, but I caught that, and it was pretty good.
Yeah, the first 2
Just
seasons
a
are
side note,
fantastic.
if you guys like to listen to audiobooks, you can actually get a version of the story read by the guy who played Ichabod Crane on the TV show.
Oh, cool.
on
Fantastic
Audible.
accent.
Oh, nice.
It's
Free?
actually it's very good. And I think it's free on Audible. They usually give it out.
Yeah, outstanding. I'm going to get that
At
as soon as this
Halloween
episode's over.
time. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so let's move on to number 3. And my number 3 is it's a comic series called Hack Slash, which is about Cassie Hack, and she's goes and kills serial killers. She's killing like Freddy Krueger type characters, and it's just it's Image Comics. It's a romp. It's really great characterizations. Just fun all the way around, especially when you read the origin story. Her mom was a serial killer lunch lady that was chopping up kids and putting them in the lunch menu.
Tasty.
She had to end up killing her mom, and that's how her whole thing goes. And it's a fantastic. I recommend probably the last arc. Probably one of the best. It lasted, I think, 70 issues. Fantastic. Todd, what is your number 3?
First and foremost, you read some really weird stuff, dude. Okay,
How long have you known me,
said,
Todd? Come on now.
No, that's why I'm laughing. I've seen some of the stuff on your bookshelf, and it's like, wow. Okay, number 3, Bram Stoker, Dracula. No question. The richness of the story, the details. Reading the thoughts of Jonathan Harker. Really, Stoker, this is a masterpiece of storytelling. And it makes Dracula out to be less of a monster and more of almost a victim.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a victim of his own decisions. How he became a blood drinker is mostly just a huge faux pas on his part. But the book itself is fantastic.
Okay, we're going to discuss this one
one
again in a few minutes. So yeah, let's move on. What is your number 3 there, Winchester?
So mine is going to be The Strain by Guillermo del Toro.
Oh,
3 books.
Damn good story.
He and Guillermo del Toro taking the jump into writing books, and then he co-wrote it along with Chuck Hogan. Another one where you take the vampires and you elevate it to a certain sense. And this was one of the main ones when I talked about earlier about how are they going to be able to do this in a movie. The entire way that they explain how, if you've seen the show, how the mouths open, and that's how they feed. The show nailed it. This was one of them where they absolutely nailed it. They did an amazing job with the effects on how they did that.
So the little wormies you thought was done well?
Yeah, everything they did, the worm, and then how their mouths opened up with their, the little feeder thing that came out, kind of a la Alien in a way.
Right.
But the books, they followed the TV show the TV show followed the books pretty decently. Few changes here and there, nothing like major. But the books were
made
fantastic.
Vampirism out to be a viral infection.
Yeah, they did
kind of would be like zombies,
genre, cross genre kind of thing, which I thought was pretty cool the way they did it. So 3 books, they're quick, easy read too.
I saw the previews and it looked like it was like a Venom story. I'm like, cool.
It actually was pretty cool show.
Yeah, and the book's amazing. So
Okay, Courtney, I see you staring like you're about to do some changes. What is your number?
No, I was just trying to look at the name of a series for one of my other ones, and I can't find it. My number 3 is Murders in the Rue Morgue by Edgar Allan Poe.
Edgar Allan Poe, yes.
Who is like a master of the genre, but it's also considered the first detective novel and the first locked door mystery. But it's pretty graphic about how the person is killed, and for the 1800s when it was written, it's like, I don't know how these ladies didn't swoon, because there's blood everywhere. So, yeah.
Okay, so on that, my number 2 is I'm putting 2 stories together, both Edgar Allan Poe. I'm doing The Raven and The Telltale Heart. Honestly, these books to me were really important because of this. That's the first time I understood what mental disease was. I'm like, I get it, because it's a man's battle with his own brain, both of them, and they're just, it's one of those books. They're very short stories, but I'm sucked into them every time I read them, and they're just deep. Anyway,
Nevermore.
Huh?
Nevermore.
The Simpsons did a great version of that one too on one of the treehouses.
It really did.
Yes, they did.
Didn't James Earl Jones do the narration on that?
I think so.
When you got Darth Vader reading the Raven, you really cannot go wrong.
No, okay. What is your number 2 there, Todd?
Well, since we're all poeing right now,
wipe.
The Mask of the Red Death.
That's a good one.
I read that one.
It is, of course, back in the 1800s when he lived and everything, and the plague was carving its way through society, and so all the rich people in town went up to the richest guy's castle and held a big party that they didn't have it, not knowing that one person that came in an outfit completely blood red was actually the embodiment of the bubonic plague, and gave it to everybody in the party. It is
everybody.
A terrifying read.
And that's where the costume for the Phantom of the Opera at the top of the stairs in the Masquerade number comes from. He's wearing the Mask of the Red Dress
with the tricorn hat. Oh yeah,
nice. I was not aware of that. Winchester, you're number 2, sir.
So, like I said, my favorite right now is definitely going to be Joe Hill, the son of Stephen King, and he did a book called Heart-Shaped Box.
Yes,
not
did.
to be
Before
confused
or after
with
the Nirvana song.
It was after.
All right.
It was definitely after.
It was about Courtney Love. Nice.
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
I just made it more horrible than anything.
I'm sorry. You got to give a little, the murderer, Courtney Love. Sorry. I'm just kidding.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
You say allegedly so we don't get sued.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it follows this rock star who is in his retirement, and he's collecting morbid memorabilia. He's got like a witch's confession, a real snuff film, and then a dead man's suit that he died in. And then a ghost is basically following him for this suit, the ghost of the guy who wore the suit. I have not really read any books that make the hair on my neck stand up. This one does. The way he's able to just talk about these little weird, eerie things that's going on when this guy's alone or he's driving in his car.
Yeah. Dude, the guy grew up with Stephen King.
Yes,
I think he's better than his dad.
Oh, no. We are not going to have that conversation today.
Nope.
No, because you love the graphic novels.
I do.
Yeah. Because Horns is really good by him also. And they actually did a decent job with the movie. But no, Heart-Shaped Boxes, it's a great book if you want to have a nice little scare session.
Very good. Courtney, what is your number 2?
Okay, so I found the name of the grouping of books. Okay, I mentioned her earlier. Her name is Heather Graham. She's a novelist, but she writes under the name of Shannon Drake. And she writes a series of books called The Alliance of Vampires. They're all set. Well, they're not set, but a bunch of it is in New Orleans, but there's also all over the country and all over the world. My favorite one in the series is Deep Midnight, and it takes place in Venice. And there's a countess who is a 1,000-year-old vampire who's manipulating people and eating people. And then there's a vampire hunter who is a vampire. Like, he's trying to go after her.
Like
and
a
it
blade.
just
Okay.
a little bit like he's part of a group, this Alliance Vampires. It's a bunch of supernatural beings who kind of stop the evil versions of themselves.
This sounds right down my alley. I'm going to check this
It's really, the whole series is amazing, but Deep Midnight's my favorite because I literally, when I read it the first time, I got the shakes as I was reading it. I'm like, am I cold?
Too much coffee.
No, it was in the middle of the night. So I'm like, am I cold or am I scared? I think I'm scared. And so then I went out and got all the other ones in the series. So
nice.
Okay, on to our number ones. And like we've made mention of several times, I'm going to go with Lock and Key, the entire series by Joe Hill. By the way, season 2
profound story.
Season 2 did come out on Netflix. I think it may not be as good as the series, but it's close. But the
graphic
artwork,
novel was amazing.
The graphic novel is, to me, the pinnacle of that style of illustration. I love the way it looks. I love the way the figures look. I love the coloring. I love the line work. It's stunningly beautiful. To me, absolutely perfect. If every comic was like that, I would have a very bad comic issue.
Oh yeah, the artwork in that really ups the mentality of it.
Yeah, it's such a great story. And it went on for, I think, 5 different graphic novels in total. Yeah, I can't suggest this enough. If you're a comic book reader, if you're not, it's a very good one to read. Yeah. Todd, what is your number one, sir?
Well, this is probably going to make some people laugh, and I don't care. Stephen King's It.
Yeah.
No laughter here.
I read that when it first came out, and it's the first book that ever actually gave me nightmares. I had a little hard time getting my mind around it, but I pretty much read it once every year and a half or so. Just the more you digest of it, the more you'll get the fact that it's less of a horror novel and more of a novel about what friendship can do for you.
It'll give you a balloon.
No, that's what anti-friendship can do for you. But the first movie they made of it, the first one they made with Tim Curry, marginally acceptable. The second one they just made with 2 parts was just a big, huge gob of bird poo. It was terrible.
You always get these great descriptions from Todd. I love that. Mr. Winchester, what's your number one, sir?
Yeah, so we already talked about a little bit The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. The book, once again, is 100 times scarier than the movie. And the movie is still the scariest thing ever. He based it off of a little boy who apparently was possessed in the 40s, I believe it was. That's where he got the story from. And I listened to somebody read like some excerpts of the actual, the accounting of this little boy being possessed, and that is hair raising. And for William Peter Blatty to get what he got from there, turning into the book, second book with Legion, which the third movie was kind of based a little after, it's remarkable what was done. And the
Catholic Church tried to get the movie The Exorcist not made.
Yes.
Well, they did that with Dogma too. So
once again, you go back to 1973 when the movie came out and people were fainting in the walkways, and it was amazing what it did. So The Exorcist still one of my top 5 favorite books ever.
Very good.
Cool.
Courtney, what is your number one? Tell us about it.
Well, Todd mentioned it earlier. It is my favorite book of all time. I read it every year. It is Dracula by Bram Stoker.
Dracula.
The original vampire, the original bloodsucker. Yeah, and like Todd mentioned, is what's so great about the book is it's not done in the typical chapter style. It's
Bounces
done in
all over.
Yeah, it's done almost journalistic style, and you enter the mind of Jonathan Harker. You enter the mind of Mina. You know, you are in Van Helsing's brain. You do Dr. Seward's,
Like Pulp
so I mean,
Fiction.
it's like you go into everybody's minds as they're all, Renfield. So you go into all of this as you're experiencing. The only brain you don't enter really is the creature himself. And he's the thing in the background.
Outside of his mentality description of what's happening to him, but you don't go in his brain because that would be squirmy.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just because vampires are supposed to be scary. Sorry, Twilight fans. Vampires are not supposed to go out in the daytime, and they are not supposed to be sparkly, and they're not supposed to be lovesick. They are supposed to be demons of the undead that eat people.
They're
viciously.
predators.
Yeah, they're predators, and that's.
But Stoker also made him into kind of a dark hero.
In a certain way, yeah. I mean, there's so many layers to this book, and honestly, every time I read it, I find something new that I miss, and I've probably read it 40,000 times. Like literally, the paperback copy that I have is held together with duct tape.
Oh, nice.
Because I've read it so many times.
Nice.
So, but yeah, Dracula. I love it.
Okay, everybody, that is an episode. Happy Halloween to everybody. Check out the website, www.iheartgeekshow.com. Use the code. We paid extra for it. Go to our Patreon. Subscribe. You get more stuff. Go to the store. Buy a t-shirt. They're really cool.
Check us out all over social media.
All over the social media. Respond to us. We do respond back because that's how we roll. And until next time, I'm Dub. I'm here with Courtney and Todd and Mr. Winchester. Keep on geeking on, guys. Happy Halloween.
Peace.
You have been listening to the latest episode of the iHeart Geek Show. Make sure you visit our website at www.iheartgeekshow.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you check us out on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And keep on geeking on to all of you geek rock stars.